Gang, the coronavirus has proven that it's going to be here for a while. The nasal swab tests are hard to get and very expensive. Well, our friends at ProResults are doing rapid COVID-19 antibody testing to let you know if you have had the virus. They take cash or credit, no insurance needed, no doctor appointment required, and you get your results in 15 minutes. Tell them you heard about them on How Did I Get Here and receive 15% off of your tests. Just go to ProResultsAustin.com/HDIGH or follow the link in the text of this podcast for 15% off antibody testing for COVID-19.
And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here?
It's time for How Did I Get Here? And now here is your host,
When we talked all night.
So, Kate Priestley, how are you doing? First of all, there's a lot of stuff going on. Is your baby was your baby created during the coronavirus?
Yes, she was created the first week of the corona lockdown. So
Okay.
she's going to be a corona baby.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? And also, like, being born into this world, like I was telling you, my cousin had a baby a few weeks ago. You're just thinking, like, oh, these kids are born into this just complete and total insanity. At least your girl has a couple months for the world to get it together.
Yeah, I'm really hoping by December when she's due that, we've kind of, who knows whether we've gained normalcy. I mean, the numbers are going up in Texas right now. I really don't know, but I'm thinking, even in that phase where she's up to 1 year old next year, she's really not going to know whether, what's really going on in the world at that point. So I think we've got a bit of time before she starts becoming more aware of those things, like why are we in lockdown, etc.
Yeah. Well, so Kate, you grew up in England?
I did, yes, in Bonnie, Yorkshire.
In Bonnie, Yorkshire. And can I ask you first real fast, over the last, I guess, a little over a month or so since the murder of George Floyd, there have been a lot of things that have come up for Black people and a lot of people of color generally.
Right.
What has the last, I mean, outside of like morning sickness and stuff like that, what has this meant to you?
It's been actually an interesting time for me. It caused a lot of anxiety for me and frustration and anger. When you're a person of color, you are connected to things like that. You can't just turn it off. And, even though I'm British, I've had a totally different upbringing to being African American. It still hits you right in the heart. And it's been an interesting thing for me to have to manage actually being pregnant, because all those emotions that I'm feeling, I'm realizing whatever I'm feeling, the baby can feel. So how do I find a balance where I can still be engaged and learn and understand what's going on, but at the same time also try to be protective of my own mental health and the health of the baby as well. So I've honestly been battling that battle, that inner battle, but I feel a lot better now. I think I feel more hopeful, and I think that there is we're making progress, and I feel hopeful that will continue as well. But yeah, I get really affected by that. I just, it just makes me feel really disheartened by the state of humanity, and how human beings can be so heartless and I always think about those things really deeply affect me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about it. The person's name can remain nameless, but I was there one day when someone said a racial thing to you at the office when we had the guy whose name I'm not going to say.
Right, right. Yeah. He brought my features up, and I think something like that was. I don't think the guy was, stable. So, there was kind of a few other factors going into that. But that one, I mean, it's
either way, it's what it was. You know what I mean? The guy, out of frustration, that's where he went.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't let that one affect me as much as, other things that have come up in my life. But yeah, you just learn to kind of get a tough skin about things and pick and choose your battles. And I just felt in that situation where it was somebody that I didn't feel was stable that came into the office was, I'm gonna let you walk out, dude. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna fight with someone that I think needed help.
Yeah. How different is it? Like, you have Black friends here. Do you guys ever talk about what is it like? What's the Black experience growing up in England?
It was different. And I think I've kind of struggled sometimes with kind of where, with the differences from moving to America, which was actually 10 years ago yesterday. I've been here 10 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But, growing up in England, it's, I'm biracial, so I grew up in a house, with a white father and a Black mother, and my mom is actually biracial too. She has is of Jamaican, Nigerian, Irish, and Scottish descent, and I think in England, they're just kind of a bit more passive aggressive with their racism. They're not out with it in the open as much as I think in the US. But I also feel, when I first came to the US, I really felt that England was a little more, a couple decades more advanced in its diversity or just integration than it is in the US. I still felt like there was a lot of separation here, and not as much in England. So there's definitely been things like that for me that were very eye-opening. And I've even talked to my husband about this. Trauma really exists here in the US. You had slaves on this land. 400 years now. There's a lot of trauma associated with the Black experience here. And in England, you've got, obviously England is definitely guilty of the crimes that they committed during the slave trade, being one of the main proponents of that. But we didn't have plantations on British soil. So the majority of Black people that came over to England was in the 1940s. There was a few before that, including my great-grandfather from Nigeria, but the majority of Black people came over in the Windrush period, which was in the 1940s up until the start of the 1970s, that came from the British Caribbean colonies to help with build the workforce, the labour force of the UK. So there was definitely prejudices then, but it's just been a different experience for Black people in the UK, I think, than it is for African Americans here. And I've really felt that difference being here, the trauma, the years of trauma here are a lot more deeply rooted than they are of of your average Black person in the UK, I feel.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've learned about generational trauma throughout this process of having these conversations, reading books, watching documentaries about this stuff, and have grown a greater understanding. My parents were both born in Cuba and they came here, but they lost their country to like a communism and all this stuff.
Right.
And through learning about this generational trauma, you can almost kind of see it in your own family. You know what I mean? Like in your
Absolutely.
own, like you can see this stuff passed down.
Absolutely. I'm definitely not have been a product of that trauma too. The British Black experience. You know, my great grandfather came to England in the 1920s from Nigeria. I believe he came to actually study, and as did a couple of his other siblings. So we lost family ties to when he passed away of pneumonia when my grandma was very young, and after that some family ties were lost to the Nigerian side. But I believe he came from quite a affluent family to have been in England at the time studying. But then he met a white woman, my great grandmother. They were one of the first interracial couples to get married in my region.
Oh, wow.
We've got quite an amazing history. And that would have been in the 1920s. You know, this is just like, it's even before, even in America, that was allowed. So they came through a lot of adversity. Her family completely disowned her. And when he died, my great granddad in Nigeria, the Nigerian side said, we'll take all the children, but we're not taking the white mother. So there was racism on both sides,
right.
Rejection on both sides. But I feel like that's really filtered down through the years, in particular with the females in my family. And, you know, my mum's mum is mixed race. And then she married a Jamaican, my granddad, that came over in the Windrush times. And, you know, growing up, my mother experienced racism, but one of the things she always drilled into me is, you know, when you're the color that you are, Kate, you can't step out of line. You have to always be well-mannered. You have to blend in. You can't be outspoken. And that's how we survive, essentially. And I feel like that's something that really I've been working through up until now into adulthood, is kind of breaking those chains or breaking those confinements that have been on me. And for sure, it's generational baggage. But I know that she was doing the best that she could to protect me. But it meant, you know, I think in the US, there's a lot more emphasis on individualism and Black empowerment. And certainly in my experience, it was the opposite, that, well, we just kind of need to blend in. You can't have too strong a voice because that's going to bring attention to your color. And in the past, we've been judged because of that, you know. So those things is, just into adulthood, I still am breaking those things down and saying, you know what, I just can't let this generational trauma still hold me back from the things that I want to do and the voice that I want to have and the experiences that I want. But yeah, it's a very real thing. I think for all families, regardless of race, you always carry baggage from the past.
Yeah. That was that interesting thing that Jerron Marshall was saying in the podcast that I did with him that you said you listened to, was that that doesn't hold him back, it holds him up. Right?
I love
Lifts him up.
that.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I love that when he said that.
Just a matter of how do you do that in your mind? How do you turn it from a weight into a lifting thing?
I think you have to decide to be the one that is changing the dynamic and that is changing the script. And you're showing, you know, your ancestors have a lot, you know, even though they went through a lot of struggle, the strength that they had to go through that struggle says a lot. And I think, you know, the best thing that you can do is turn that around and show them what it means over the years to be where you are and have the freedoms that you have, to make a difference. And that's the legacy. That's, through their struggle, you've been able to get to where you are, and it doesn't have to repeat that cycle of struggle. It can change in the society that we're in. It's sometimes it's a mindset that holds us back. I mean, really, that's what it is. And in spite of the adversity that we have, we still have the power to do so much. If we're confident and positive that we can, and we just believe in ourselves.
Right. But I mean, like, there's only so much your mindset can do when you're seeing people getting killed just for the color of their skin,
right.
by the
Right,
police, or people not being able to get a loan, or it gets hard to vote. All the sort of systemic things that we feel are kind of in place here since the Jim Crow era,
Right. Absolutely.
Do those things exist in the system in England? Because you were talking a lot more what seems to be more interpersonal things, but is
some of those things exist in England. I feel in my upbringing, we experienced racism, but as far as, being able to get loans and voting, etc., there were never any barriers for things like that. I do feel that there is a bigger socioeconomic divide between white and Black or people of color populations in the US than in the UK. And I really wasn't used to either kind of the segregation of neighborhoods here.
And even in Austin.
UK.
Yeah, and even in Austin,
I
that's
didn't grow up like that.
Right.
So it was a bit eye-opening. That's how I imagine when I've watched, American films of, before the 1950s, and, you can still see those traces here. But, I think there are areas that, you've got inner suburb neighborhoods of flats, kind of apartments in England that, would be predominantly immigrants or people of color that live there. So there's definitely disparities in the UK as well, but I think not as big a divide. But then I'm saying that I actually grew up in a city that had a huge Indian and Pakistani population. It was one of the biggest ones in my city in Bradford, which was always great because the food was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
But they would definitely be a bit more divided in where they live. They tend to live together.
But do you think that's because, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I noticed that with my family as well. Like, my family went from Miami to from Cuba to Miami, and then they kind of went to Wichita Falls for a little while, and then they moved to Houston. But they moved into a neighborhood where there's a Cuban guy like half a block away. There's a Cuban guy around the corner, because they're like, "Hey man, we found a place or something. Let's get it together. Let's be together." I mean that is a thing. I mean, you see that like when you go to places like New York and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that's important as well. If you're doing that through choice as well, and you're wanting to keep those traditions and customs and culture and have those similarities, I think that's really important. And I think that we can also have that in the US. There's so many immigrants here, that I think we can all live together, but also respect each other's cultures and make those a priority as well as being an American,
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking, I mean, one of the things that I've also learned is that African Americans have been stripped of their history.
Right.
Like their history, as far as they're even taught in school, like starts, they're just slaves here. That's
right.
That's it. That's where your whole ancestry starts, in that way. And so maybe there's like a thing where like they've had to develop their own cultures, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And
right. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, there's areas, you know, you look at New Orleans. I just watched a Padma Lakshmi, the cooking show Taste the Nation at the moment, and there's a whole other, I think it's in North Carolina, a whole other Black community there that has got their own language. They've got their own foods as well, which have been inspired by some of the African vegetables and flavorings that they brought over. I think that's really important, and especially when you've had the trauma that Black people have here through slavery, you have to build each other up. And I think there's I don't think camaraderie is the right word, because it's not this is based in trauma, but yeah, I feel there's an importance to band together, and I just think that's probably it's a good thing after experiencing so much trauma.
yeah,
You know, but what's actually interesting, you know, my husband is Jewish. His father's side is Jewish. And we were just having a discussion about, you know, when the Jews were persecuted, they tried to just blend in here. And now they're going from being a brown person to all of a sudden saying they're white because they can pass for that. There's still debate as to whether Jews are actually white or not.
right.
And I read that as well recently with Italians would also do that. If you came over and you had racism and biases towards you, if you could blend in, you're going to do that. You can't do that as a Black person.
Can't do that as a Black person, no.
So, you know, the whole experience is, it's been a tough one. It's been one of resilience.
It's funny. I have a sister that posted this thing a few weeks ago, and she and I are at odds ideologically and not speaking over these kind of conversations and stuff that she finds. She hasn't listened to them, but she assumes we want to burn down America, and that's what we're plotting on these, or her idea of America, right?
Wow.
So she posted this thing that was kind of like, and I'm noticing this a lot from white people, like, well, you know, 99.5% of cops I know are good people. 96.7% of people I know aren't racist, blah, blah, blah. And then it ended with, see, if you choose to see evil in the world, you'll see it. I choose not to. And I was like, well, of course, you don't have to. So you're some white chick walking down the street with your baby. No one's looking at you cross-eyed. So you can, in fact, as a white person, choose not to see that stuff. And I think that this giant awakening that's been happening over the last month or so has been people like me that, like, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it except try and just not be that yourself. But now we're finding out that that's just really not enough. That there has to be some kind of move it forward. We got to get involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really been bothering me when I see, you know, people reacting to Black Lives Matter with all lives matter.
That's
and
not
it's like,
yet.
you really, you're like totally missing the point here. Like we're just trying to say that right now, look at the systemic racism, police brutality, oppression of Black people, and like, let's just acknowledge that. Why are you uncomfortable acknowledging something that is reality? You know, once if Black Lives Matter, if Black lives already mattered, we wouldn't have to say Black Lives Mattered, you know. And I just, you know, interesting. I was just chatting with a white friend of mine, a really good close friend of mine, and she's training to be a doula at the moment. And she's training with a black doula that's also part of the LGBTQ plus community. And part of their training is actually focused on race and biases. And they're having to do homework all the time saying, well, you might have a black friend or you might have a friend that's a person of color, but that doesn't mean that you don't have biases. Most people have biases which are just blind spots. And we have to, say in an example, like you're saying with a family member that's saying, she's cool, there's no issues. Probably, you have to be open to looking outside of your framework and being open to people's experiences, because a blind spot or a bias is not understanding somebody else's experience here. And that's why it's really important that we have these discussions, that you're open to somebody else's experience, because her experience for sure is different to an African American's, is different to a Hispanic's, is different to, somebody else here. And so, and I don't think, yeah. There we go. I'll just do my little, yeah.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, that's exactly what that washing of the hands.
The washing of the hands. That was it. Washing the hands right after that.
I've had to do that with a couple of people, and it's funny because really, like, they don't know what we're talking about. They won't give us the time to listen, but they're just so offended that somebody white is like, you know what I mean? Like, I believe that's right. what really offends them, is that I'm like, man, what can I do to be better, when they're like, wait a minute, I'm fine, Right.
I agree. And I don't think, I know that there's a movement at the moment to defund the police. There needs to be a lot of reform in how the police are handling situations. But I don't think, the Black Lives Matter movement, we're not trying to say that all cops are bad. Right. That, it's not that. It's asking to just look at the realities that are happening,
right,
and the injustices, and how can we change those biases, change the script, change the abuse of force that is happening. It's really sad when people they're just in their security bubble, and they are not open to understanding somebody else's perspective, which if you're not white, it's going to be a totally different experience that you have in this country.
Yeah, totally. Well, let me ask you, so you moved here 10 years ago, and you were already playing music?
Yes, I was, and I had only recently started 4 years prior to when I was 26 years old. I started getting into music after I backpacked around India, and I met an Indian music teacher who told me, hey, your destiny is in music, and you have to go forth with that. So that planted the seed, and ever since then, I've been doing music.
Right. So when you moved here, what did you make of the scene? Because there's been a lot of talk. I mean, you and I both work not just in the scene, like playing and making music, but we are also in a behind the scenes thing as well. We can see how things are working. There's a lot of things that have been brought to light by our friend Jackie Benson, our colleague Jackie Benson.
Right. Love Jackie.
And just last night, did you watch the Blues on the Screen?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, we had an Austin Music Foundation workshop, but we were still supporting Jackie as well. So I switched on straight afterwards and then watched the playbacks at the start. I thought she had a great conversation with Andy Langer.
Great conversation with Andy, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So what did you see as, like, because I can tell you, my brother, who's super cool, came here a couple years ago, and I came to visit, and we went to Continental Club, and we went to Continental Club Gallery, and we went to Sea Boys, and then we went to Hotel Vegas at the end of the night, and then we came back here. And in the Uber ride on the way home, he asked me if there's any black people in Austin.
Wow.
And do I know any? Because I literally just took him to 4 places and he didn't see any black people. And nothing against any of those places. I frequent those places. I love those places. But that reminded me that, yes, this is a very, he's like, I thought this was like this liberal city and all this stuff. And
right.
And you're like, yeah,
very
it is, but it's also
city.
very, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did you pick up on that when you came here?
Definitely. I mean, I loved Austin because the people were cool. It's got a hippie vibe, which is, my kind of vibe. So I enjoyed all of that. I enjoyed the localness of it, even though some of that is going now. But I was very aware that I did not see many black people here. And I would tell my now husband a lot of the time, like, I've been very conscious over the years that I can be in a room so often and be the only person of color in the room. I'm very aware of that. But I have seen over the years more black people, but it's still not Houston. It's still not Dallas. It's still not Atlanta, But as far as the music community goes, I had a little bit of a shock here because England, you've got so much diverse music there for such a small country.
Yeah.
Just Europe generally is so diverse with the musical genres. And here it was still, you could see small pockets of that, but it was still very country, Americana. And, the first year that I came here, somebody booked us at Poodie's Hilltop. They booked a neo soul band.
Yeah.
At Poodie's Hilltop. And we didn't know anything about the space. They were just like, okay, if you play here, we'll book you into like the main venue in town. And we're like, okay. So then we go and I've got like my purple crushed velvet leggings on and like my platforms and all the band is wearing their crazy funk gear. And we got there and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, we do not fit here. And the people there, you could tell their reaction was, you guys do not fit here, right? And after us, they put a country music on that was talking about sex, drugs, and cocaine, and they all went crazy. So that's
You're
when we
bringing
were
the
like,
wrong
okay.
message there, KP. Well, it's funny because that group, that what I would imagine what would be at Poodie's in my mind is people that are left over from the armadillo that was supposed to be so open-minded, but that was also a lot of white people too. And I don't think they were like actively, I don't think Eddie Wilson is like a racist. I mean, the guy that owned the armadillo.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I remember the sound guy was stoked to have us because,
Right.
he's just used to like running sound for the same band. So he was like, oh man, I love you guys. This is so different for me. This is great because he was challenged, But, that's just like one experience. But I found on the backside of things, which, you're aware of and I've been a part of as well. It's definitely been white male oriented. When I write grants, I will help with the grants for AMF. When I was looking at the last music census that came out, and some of the research that I did, it was saying there's hardly any black leaders here in music. This was about 5 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago, and hardly any black venues here as well. And I found that really disheartening, but also very
eye-opening.
Very eye-opening as well. And I think there needs to be more of that. When my family come out, my stepdad, who is white. He's a big music fan.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said, the first time he came to Austin is, wow, it's not really diverse here. He was kind of focusing on the music side of things, but he was quite shocked when you think about Austin and South by Southwest, the kind of history of that and what we tout and what we advertise. I know some of it is changing now, but he felt that it wasn't as diverse as he was expecting it to be. And, I feel an excitement when I think about the possibility for more Black leadership, more Black music venues, more diversity in Austin, because I feel like it's not just going to be Black people that want that. It's going to be other people that want that too. I think it's long overdue, and I do think that there is a Black music community as well in Cedar Park, I think, but I don't live up there. I've not been involved in that. But yeah, it's been interesting in Austin, but I do also feel like I've been very lucky. People have been open to KP and the Boom Boom. We have quite a universal sound with the neo soul, but with influences of R&B and world music.
Right.
And I don't feel that that's really held us back in this town. It could be as well that I play with a bunch of white music, so maybe I'm a bit more accessible.
I don't
that's
know.
not white.
I think. I'm assuming that like soul music came from America, but when it goes back to Britain and then comes back, it's like rock and roll. Like I love Elvis and Chuck Berry; those guys started the whole thing. But like when you send it over there and bring it back again, you're like, oh,
Right.
okay, because like there is something. I know we talked about that for a while because I've always been a fan of UK soul bands like Roachford and people like that. Like
for
people that just.
sure.
But there is a
I used
certain.
to love like the brand new heavies.
Yeah, but there is like a certain British soul sound that
There
is
is
influenced more by
definitely.
like world music, I think.
Yeah, and a lot of people actually, were on the times that we toured with the band, and people that were like fans of us just loved us. They'd come and chat with us afterwards. And a lot of people said, man, you guys would do so well in Europe. You've got like a European influence to the sound as well, which, it's definitely different. UK soul, neo soul, funk. That's just what I love about the UK. For such a small country, as I said earlier, like the amount of inspiration that comes out of that country is crazy. I think it must be, I don't know if it's the changing weather, the moodiness of the weather that sparks all these emotions. But man, the Brits kill it when it comes to music.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, have you been prolific during this? Because you've kind of shifted your gears into more of a singer-songwriter. But it's sorry. There's one thing I want to stop. I want people to stop calling singer-songwriter a style of music, because Stevie Wonder's a singer-songwriter. Right. You're a singer-songwriter. I'm a singer-songwriter. We don't play the same music.
Right, for sure. You're totally right about that. I always find it strange. Yeah, I think they mean just you with your guitar. But
that's still not a style of music. You could be playing Caribbean music.
Yeah, you could be playing reggae. You could be playing folk. Definitely jazz.
Yeah.
At the start of COVID, I was being productive, writing a lot of songs, but a lot of them were kind of depressing because they were COVID inspired. And, listening back to them, I was like, I really don't think I should put this out, because I feel like people need something hopeful right now. We need optimism. We need positivity, not me, wah, wah, singing some depressing song. And then, I found out I was pregnant, and the first few weeks I was okay. But then once I started getting really sick with it, it definitely knocked me out. And so there's been a period that I've not picked up my guitar, and I'm just getting back now. I think I'm going to record some demos in the next month. But there's been a lot of inspiration just with, not with COVID, but the experience right now that's going on with racial injustice, and me thinking about my own identity, being Black, being biracial, and sometimes not feeling not feeling Black enough by people, or feeling judged. And I think a lot of biracial people have those issues, like an identity kind of conflict. And I want to write about that still. I know Tate Austin was just talking about that on Facebook, and I found it really inspiring that I'm not the only person that's had issues like that growing up being biracial. So that is definitely as well probably going to be one of the next songs that I write. So yeah, I still, I've definitely got the motherhood journey, which is a huge one for me. And I actually did apply to do a songwriting course with Victory Boyd that I absolutely love. Amazing musician from New York. But I decided to not go further with it. It would have been a 2-month course. I said to a good friend of mine that's a musician, I'm like, I feel like maybe I'm going to miss out on this once in a lifetime opportunity, not taking her writing course. And she's like, Kate, having your baby is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was like, oh man, I love you. Thank you so much for that perspective.
Yeah. Have you done song? I don't think I've never taken a songwriting class or a course. I've just written with really good songwriters. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the same thing, because I don't know how to explain what I'm doing really.
Right. I haven't taken a songwriting course before. The only experiences that I've had recently have been more with the House of Songs. Mm-hmm. And I've been wanting to join a songwriters group. I know Ray Prim does them a lot, and we've spoken about it. I've spoken to him in the past about it.
You got to be careful with that one, because man, they throw you out if you're late.
Right,
kicked out.
I heard that. Yeah, well, that was my thing. Yeah. Ray's not holding back. And you've got to produce a song sometimes every week. And sometimes my workflow ebbs and flows. It depends on my inspiration. I've got some friends of mine that songwrite that can easily put something out. I spoke with a good friend of mine, Erin from Keeper, and Erin Jansen, and we were hanging out at ACL together last year, and she was like, I just put stuff out, and I don't really think about, if it's good or bad. I'm not going to judge myself too harshly. I'm just going to put it out. And I was like, man, I love that perspective. I'm someone that is more, well, I don't think I should put something out yet. She's talking about the song. She was in Ray's songwriting group last year. I think I need to work on it more. And then I'll hear it again. No, I need to improve this. No, I need to do that. So my timeline to get something out is a lot longer than another friend's could be.
Right. But one of the main exercises within that exercise is not being too precious with what you've got and just finishing. Right. The act of finishing is enough, because then that's the hardest. I think as a writer, that's the hardest part, is finishing. Right.
Totally.
If it's not blowing your mind, how many abandoned ideas do you have,
Oh, so many. All my COVID songs have been abandoned.
Where do you record there in your house? You record on your computer or anything?
I do. I record on my computer. I've got a little setup here. And I've been wanting to, do some more professional recordings, which I don't feel like I've got the experience for. So I will be reaching out to some people. Yes, definitely.
He's got that room now.
We bumped into each other last week at AMF. and he mentioned that he's recording demos, and was I interested in doing some? So I was like, absolutely. So I need to hit him up. But yeah, he's definitely excited about his new adventures as well. And I just think it's such a great idea what he's doing with the demos, which is really needed here, for a good price. And we don't have a lot of those opportunities in Austin. So I'm going to jump on that train.
So for those of you listening, I live about somewhere between a third and a half a mile from Austin Music Foundation. And I work with them there on a looser basis than Kate and Einar. But I can't tell you, I walk by there almost every day in the morning on my walks. And there's the saddest little setup where Emily sits like her... It's like one of those things where, like, what happened when the world ended? Like her sweater's still on her chair. Yeah, there have been times when I walk by and I've been like, oh, and her sweater's still there. They shut it down and she left her sweater.
Yeah, we're still working from home, everyone, and put our program in online. But yeah, like in-person office stuff at the moment will not resume until it's safe to do so.
Yeah. Well, I think in some ways it makes, I know that just the act of not having to get in a car and drive to a place probably makes it a little bit easier for the artists that are coming in for the consultations.
Yeah.
To just stop what they're doing, take an hour,
Absolutely. Yeah, we've actually had really good feedback about the transition to consultations being online. And we got it set up pretty quickly with the software. We added some new guest consultants that I know Adrienne Lake's been very popular.
Right.
She's killing it right now. So yeah, it's been awesome to see. And actually, our numbers have increased as well. So this time where we were last year with in-person consultations, they've gone up.
That's great.
I think just having that accessibility, as you said, not having to battle I-35 traffic.
Or take a long break from work, because if you want to come in for an hour consultation, you have to take 2 hours off from work.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. I think some people still like in-person, but there's going to be other people that for sure can, with their schedule, it's going to be a lot easier doing a Zoom call.
Yeah. So you're due in December.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this.
Girl.
I know. Congratulations. Does that make a difference? Because in my talking to some mothers on this show, they talk about their experience that violence doesn't really come at them as much as males.
Ooh. Yes, I would. Being black.
As far as being a threat, yes.
Being a threat.
A black male is more threatening to the white person than a black female.
Yes, I totally agree. There is something about society and the way males have been represented through history that really sees them as more a threat. And it's not that women subject to biases. Of course they are. Of course women of color are. But there's something about the male body that is really subjected to that. And I don't have all the answers, but that there is definitely truth to that. And I also find that people are disarmed when they hear my accent, and not that even should be a thing that affects people's judgments of me. But I think people feel like, oh, listen to Kate. She's not as threatening. Like, she's got this lovely British accent.
She sounds like my Google.
Yeah. And could be a storyteller like Morgan Freeman, maybe I'm missing out on a whole new career there. But, in some ways that kind of makes me sad that you would judge someone on their accent, I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
that you feel more comfortable with a black person because she has a British accent than if she had an American accent, you know?
Yeah. Do you? This is weird, but what would you say to your child right now if they could understand what was going on in the world?
You know, I've definitely had those conversations with my husband quite a bit. We were just talking about that this morning, but we were talking more about if she is subject to biases, how to prepare her for those things. But I would say she's gonna be the new generation. She's gonna have a voice. She's gonna have the power to change things. And, you know, I want to teach her the lessons that we've learned, the lessons through history, to say every generation can contribute something really positive. And I really hope that our child can do that. She's going to have quite, be quite an international baby.
Yeah.
You know, my husband's mother's side is Norwegian. She's from Norway. She's Norwegian. And then he's got the Jewish side too. And then you've got me that's a mix of different things. And so we've spoken about what will identity mean to her. You know, she's gonna be a lot of different things. But for sure, it's going to be one of education. It's going to be one of empowerment. And I do feel hopeful for the new generations coming up. Every time I meet the younger generations, I'm always so impressed by them. And I think that they'll do a really good job of steering us forward. I think it's actually very interesting for them to be growing up in this time. What is it like for a 10-year-old right now to be watching the news and taking this all in, and how is that going to shape their future and their mindset?
You know what's funny? I can only equate that to things that I saw on television before I was 10, but I remember being small and kind of playing with my cars in the living room and the news being on, and like a Vietnamese person on fire in the street.
Oh my God.
I might have been 4 or 5. I don't like totally haven't forgotten that shit. So I'm always like, when people are like, oh, he's too young, he won't remember it. I'm like, no, I remember all the fucking freaky shit that I saw before I was supposed to see something. Like I have a very, I was watching that Vietnam documentary and they showed that, and I'm like, that's exactly what I saw. That's exactly what I saw.
I read the biography of that person, that child. It was years ago now. It was when I was traveling in Thailand, back when I was 21, and reading their story. But you know, just a question for you: do you wish that your parents would have explained what that was, rather than just saying, you know, you should be watching that as a child?
No one said anything.
Right.
Like I was, you know, I'm older than you. Like in the 70s, like it was just kind of like you went outside when you woke up, you came back to eat, and you went to sleep, and people just didn't even think about where you were. Like now, if your kid isn't like in the house, it might have gone outside to check the mail or something. Like people are like calling 911. It was a bit of a different world.
Right.
I was talking about the world change when they put netting around trampolines.
Right.
Like I was like, yeah, these guys are gonna have a different upbringing than I did.
Oh, totally, right. I even remember, like, it was such a big deal for us to lock the house doors growing up, and you know, speaking to my dad, and it just, when they were growing up, that wasn't a thing. You know, you didn't have to like lock your house. You know, and it's only gotten worse as we've gotten older, as he said. Like there is a mass paranoia now of the potential things that can happen to your children when they are unattended.
Yeah. There was a Saturday Night Live skit a long time ago, like probably over 20 years ago, and Jerry Seinfeld was the host. And it was just a news program, and all they said is like, something in your house could kill your child. We'll tell you after these messages. And then they go to the next person. They'd be like, something in your house is trying to kill you. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that stuff. I wonder how much of that plays into it because we've been fed all this paranoia.
Oh, yeah, totally. We have been fed so much paranoia.
I see some young parents now that are like almost, I mean, not as lax as like mine, but like where you're like, okay, cool, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a wave of, I don't know if more hippie is the right way.
Yeah, my mom was a hippie.
I know I'm a bit of a hippie, but that kind of more relaxed mentality. You've certainly got a wave of that in Austin as well with some of the people here. And I think, you can see those movements on social media as well, on Instagram. But yeah, I think me and David as well, we definitely don't want to be over controlling parents. We want to, obviously we're going to teach our kids right, but yeah, there has to be some freedoms for them to have their own experience of the world without us shaping it based on our generational baggage or other things. We don't want to put that on the next generation.
Right. I think that's probably one of those things that's probably really good that I didn't have kids because I think I would have had the backlash and been like go to school with my kid just to make sure nothing happened to them while they were at school. Like they're in the class and I'm just looking through the little window like, don't mess with my kid, boy. You know what I mean? I feel like I would be one of those parents where they're like, your kid, I don't know. Like, maybe you're stupid. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Well, Kate, I'm so happy for you. I really am. I'm really happy for you. And this has been a great conversation. I'm really glad that we got to do it. Thank you for dealing with my scheduling stuff.
I actually had a dream about you last night. And
how was my hair?
Your hair was great, actually. We were grocery shopping, and we only had half an hour because we needed to do the interview today. And so I was driving, so I was like, okay, Johnny, we've only got 30 minutes. And we were in it wasn't a Walmart. It was like a British supermarket, but you were like, well, I need a new pair of jeans. I need a new pair of pumps. So you start throwing all these clothes in the basket.
I think that's weird that you say that because I went to the grocery store this morning at 9:30 and was looking at my watch the whole time because I didn't want to be late or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Luckily I didn't need jeans today.
Are you doing one of those broadcasts like you've just got a T-shirt on and nothing
and
else?
no pants? That's called when you have a T-shirt on and nothing underneath. It's called Pooh Bearing because you're dressed like Winnie the Pooh.
Oh,
and so I'm
funny.
a big fan of Pooh Bearing. I think that. I wonder how many people I saw. Okay, one more thing and I'll let you go. But I saw one of my neighbors here at the apartments. She came out the other day and went walking to her car to get something. But she popped her head out, and her hair was beautifully done. Her makeup was amazingly done. She was wearing like a lady's dress shirt with like ruffles, and then like the ugliest gym shorts you've ever seen from like 1982, and like flip flops. And when she walked out to her car, I was like, wow. And then I was like, oh, I bet she's having a Zoom meeting. And when she came walking back, I was like, is that your Zoom outfit? And she's like, yeah, just the top. That was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's it. There needs to be Zoom portraits, really.
Where you see the Zoom and then they show you what the person's really wearing.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. Do you you have a website that people can go find your stuff?
No, I'm currently working on that, and I'm hoping during this time as well, I get all that stuff together, my paperwork. So if you're listening as a musician, that's a really good time to do that. Get your assets together. But that's the next thing on my list. So right now I just have kpandtheboomboom.com. And yeah, that is a work in progress. So that will be definitely coming.
Well, I have enjoyed talking to you so much, and I love your music, and I love you as a person very, very much. And I'm glad
Thanks, Johnny,
that we're friends, and I'm so happy for you. Do you have a name for your
Thank
baby
you.
yet?
We do,
gonna be
but
weird.
we're going to keep it
Okay,
on the
keep it on
down
the
low, and
down.
it's actually a song that David's parents grew up with this particular artist. I'm not going to say who it is, and so he played me this song like 8 years ago, and was like, "If we ever have a girl, can we name her after this song?" So we knew we were hoping it was going to be a little girl, and it was. So we were like, "Yep, she's going to be called this." So yeah, keeping it in the music realm.
I'm going to see if everyone in our circle of friends will refer to her as Kate Jr. until we until it's time. Well, thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Thank you so much for
Johnny.
doing it.
Everybody's wanting what they don't have. High heels, blue jeans, Gucci bag with the diamonds on it. Yeah. And everybody's searching for that something. Like who you know, where you got, where you been, and what you doing for me. Everybody's wanting what they can have. Fancy cars, apple watch, shiny teeth with a gold in. A material epidemic is breaking out. We forget who we are while we're chasing Monday American dreams. It's a crazy world. We all hungry by the dollars. We're turning in a holler to a brother brown. We're selling our souls. Everybody's wanting what they don't have. High heels, blue jeans, Gucci bag with the diamonds on it. Everybody's wanting what they can have. Fancy cars, apple bar, shiny teeth with a gold in it. And everybody's searching for that something. Like who you know, who you got, where you been, and what you doing for me. A material epidemic is breaking out. Forget who we are while we're chasing a Monday American dreams. It's a crazy world. We all hungry by the dollars. We're turning in a holler to a brother brown. We're selling our souls. It's a crazy world. We all hungry by the dollars. We're turning in a holler to a brother brown. We're selling our It's a crazy world. We all hungry for the dollars. We're turning in a holler to a brother brown. We're selling our souls. It's a crazy world. We all hungry for the dollars. We're turning in a holler to a brother. Wow, we're selling our souls.